To start, How to Ruin the Holidays was inspired by your relationship with your brother, told through a comedic lens, and it feels so different from how these sibling dynamics are usually told through media. How early on did you know you wanted to tell this story in this way, and why was that so important for you?
I feel like in a way I've always wanted to be able to do something like this, but I just didn't know if I was ever going to be able to. And I guess I was
Mm,
maybe a little bit scared of getting it wrong. So I kind of like subconsciously like didn't. But then when we made this short film, that was awesome, which is on YouTube as well, and it's Luke who plays my brother in the movie, or the role that was inspired by
yeah.
my brother in the movie. Luke, that's where we met him, was on that project, and he was just so good, and I loved working with him. And I was like, oh wow, I finally found an actor through which I could try to tell some of these stories. So that was really the seed, was like meeting Luke,
Mm.
having that first project where I was like, okay, we're gonna dive into this world. And then it went good, and I felt good about it. And I felt like something said, like, dude, you gotta keep going with this. And the reason it's so important to me is because it's like a truthful reflection
Yeah.
of my lived reality. And when you don't see that in the media, you feel like, okay, well, maybe there's a gap that I can contribute something that means something to me.
Beautifully said. And everybody feels so perfectly cast within this film. As you were penning the script, did you have these actors in mind? How did knowing what they were capable of influence how you wrote for them?
The majority of the parts were written with someone in mind. Not like every single role, but like all the leads for sure. And then a lot of the secondary roles too. And I like writing for people that you know who it's going to be, because you can kind of go that next step
Yeah.
of like not just trying to write a good character that's like got funny lines and is three-dimensional and is like interesting and truthful, but also you go like, okay, what type does this person play, and am I going to lean into that type or lean away
Mm.
from that type? So yeah.
You're opening so many doors for so many of these actors. The film strikes this perfect balance between comedy and these really heartfelt moments. Was that something that you were mindful of as you were writing it? And the comedy genre itself lends itself to improvisation. How were you able to create this space for these actors to play and take ownership over their characters?
I'm just such a softie. Like I really am, like I come by it honestly. I'm a real hard on my sleeve kind of guy.
Mm,
And for better or for worse, um, I like to put my characters into situations that are really heartfelt, and then use that tension that comes from drama or, emotion or whatever, and then use that to like spring into a joke.
yeah.
So that's just like what I like to do. Um, and then improvisation. So, it's wild because we like had no money on this movie. Like it was the most low budget thing ever. And so we didn't have a lot of time. That's the thing that the low budget really
Mm.
costs us, time. And that means that we didn't have as much room for improvisation as we wanted. Um, but that didn't stop the cast. So, you know, um, and honestly, they improvised. Like some of my favorite moments in the film were improvised. Um, at the very end, when they're driving away, and
Mhm.
the neighbor is watching them go. Um, in the script, he has this long monologue where he's like, I'll never meet anyone like you again, and as much as I hate you, and it's like, this long, 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 long monologue. And then Henry just goes, who am I without you? I don't know that man. And it was so much funnier. So
Yeah.
I was lucky that we got great improv moments out of all of our cast.
I think it's a testament to you as a writer too, because you don't let audiences sit with one emotion for too long. I think it's just so brilliantly done. It's been a long road bringing this project to life. What's been the most surprising part about this journey? And what has it meant for you to see how this project is resonating with so many audiences?
Somebody gave me some advice because this is my first film, you know?
Mm,
And so I was learning as I went about a lot of things. because I wrote it and I produced it. So it
Yeah.
was like learning the business of film as I go. And somebody gave me advice, and they were like, every phase is the hardest phase. And I thought, there's no way that's true. That cannot be true. Because they told me that when I was fundraising, and I was like, this is impossible. But it really is true. It really is true. Just when you think it can't get any harder, you get into the next phase and you're like, oh, this is much harder. um, so that's been surprising to me. I knew it was going to be challenging, but I was like, I come from the world of theater and
Yeah.
comedy. Like, how much harder can it be? It's harder. But that just makes it all the more rewarding to get to the finish line and to get it out in front of people. Um, I get messages,
Yeah.
trickling in throughout the month. I just was reading an email from someone that was like, a member of our family, we've been watching the development. We donated to the Kickstarter,
Mm.
years ago, and now it's finally being released. And a member of our family just passed away, and we all watched the movie together, and we love it and all this stuff. And I'm just like, the fact that they would message me that says that they really do feel connected to it. And so that's pretty rewarding.
Yeah, that's gotta motivate you so much to write another feature in the future as well. I mean, like you were just saying, you have a background in theater. On this stage, you get reactions and responses immediately. But with film, as you were saying, it takes a long time before audiences are able to see it. You were lucky enough to have the Atlanta premiere where the film was shot. What was that experience like? And what was your favorite kind of behind the scenes moment there?
Yeah, the Atlanta screenings were awesome.
Yeah.
They were just the best. You know, people are just so enthusiastic and excited. And so there was just like big laughs and like big cheers. And it was just like a wild night. Although I had a bit of a hangover the next day. I'm not afraid to tell you. My favorite behind the scenes. Um, well, one of the executive producers, his name is Chris Escobar, and he's also the owner of the Plaza Theater. He's the
Mm,
executive director of the Atlanta Film Festival. He's a very, he's a leader in that scene in Atlanta. And so we're playing at his Plaza Theater, and he's got a little photo booth. And me and the director were kind of pacing and nervous and like, and he goes, hey, hop in. He sticks us in the photo booth and sticks $1 in and just gets us some pictures because he's like, you got to remember it, guys. This is,
yeah.
you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, that's so smart. And I just really appreciate it. Was just such a cool gesture, and it's
Yeah.
a sweet moment. So that was my favorite behind the scenes from the premiere.
So special about getting to see a film that you helped create with a live audience. And speaking of Arlen, you've worked with him in the past. What was that early conversation, pitching this script to him and having him direct? How have the two of you been able to push each other creatively throughout the years?
Working with Arlen, the good thing is that we have so much trust because
Mm,
we've been a comedy duo on stage since 2005. So we've seen it all, man. We've seen big comedy festivals, we've seen tiny, shitty little gigs, and everything in between. We've seen our bodies get old and frail over the years, like truly, like we're coming up on 20 years.
yeah.
I trust him. And it would have been really hard for me to really hand off the film to a director that I didn't have that level of trust in. But because
Mm,
I did have that level of trust, I was like, look, man, like in production, I am fully giving you creative leadership. Like it's yours right now. You know what I mean? Ultimately, it's ours. It's a project we did together. But like when I was writing it, it felt like mine. And then
yeah.
when we got into production, I handed it over to him and it felt like his. And ultimately, it would have been really scary because it's such a personal script.
Yeah.
It would have been really scary to do that with someone that I didn't have that level of trust, but we do have it. And like that sense of humor, like that mixture of emotion and humor, that's something we do together on stage, you know? Um, and so I knew that he would understand how to play them,
Mm. Yeah, I
So
think
yeah.
that's the beauty of filmmaking too, is that collaboration. I really think you have a holiday classic on your hands. With the film out now, is there a scene in particular that you're really excited for audiences to see? What do you hope they take away?
Well, I mean, I hope that audiences take away a lot of things. I hope that people with developmental disabilities feel like seen and portrayed and
Mm,
represented. You know, um, I hope that like general population of just folks that are seeing it and don't know what they're walking into, I hope they maybe walk away with a broader understanding of what it means for someone to have this type of disabilities, because the portrayal in media is pretty narrow generally, not always, but like generally.
yeah, yeah,
And I just wanted people to go, oh, maybe I can broaden my thinking. But then like in general, I guess I would say I hope that people think about like, the way things have always been done, the way that everyone's always told us that it
yeah,
has to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be. We can create our own new ways of doing stuff that's the way that we think it should be,
mm,
even if that looks a little different than like what we always thought. If I
yeah.
hope that's not too vague, but
No, that's a beautiful sentiment. I got one final question for you. Outside of this project, what's next for you? And have you started writing maybe a sophomore feature?
yeah, I've been working on a few different things. It's funny because I think if I had known what I know about filmmaking now, back when I started this last project, I
Mm,
don't necessarily know that I would have even done it, because I'd be like, it's too hard, you know? So now that I know a little bit more, I'm like, okay, well, I have to make sure that it's this and it's that. And so it's like my education in being a film producer has like almost slowed me down, because now I want to do things in a smart as way of possible.
mm,
So I've got a few different things. I'm working on a mockumentary because, I love the improv. I'm working on a horror project.
cool.
Because Amber and Henry really want to do a horror project. So we got a few different things, but I'm not sure what's going to be the thing that actually goes.